All right, we are talking about origin stories. This is our second lesson, and this is a series about what it looks like to be a Christian, what it has looked like to be a Christian throughout history, and guess what? We get a pretty bad rap these days, don't we? Yeah. If you guys have been listening, we get a really bad rap these days. And so we want to look into the truth of our story and what it means to be a Christian in some different areas. Tonight, if we have time, we will end with some question and answer time. So try to come up with a great question. Try to stump Pastor Josh. And you'll do it easily because you're really smart. But as I'm going through the lesson, try to think of a question you might want to ask and remember it right on your phone or something like that. And we may be able to hit those at the end. You don't have to now, Lily. You can wait till I say something. You're like, I got it already. I'm all set. All right, I'm going to start with a story. When my dad was a little kid, 9 or 10 years old, somebody moved into his neighborhood. Their family bought a great big house with a really nice swimming pool. Now, my dad grew up in Southern California, so a swimming pool is a big deal when it's hot and the weather's warm. And so this is pretty exciting that there's this neighbor kid that has a swimming pool. To make matters better, the neighbor kid has a birthday coming up, and he invites all the neighborhood kids to come to his new house to his birthday party. So what's everybody thinking, right? Pool party! So they're excited, they're going to swim, they're talking about it, how great it's going to be. So everybody shows up to the pool party, and then the new kid makes an announcement to the whole group. Guess what? The pool's broken. We won't be able to use it for the party. We may not be able to use it all summer. Oh, downer. Crushed. So then, about 2 weeks later, the new kid throws a second party for all the neighborhood kids to come over. And guess what happens?
The pool breaks.
Nobody shows up, except for my dad. My dad was the only kid who showed up to the second party. And the kid told my dad, guess what? The pool works fine. And we could go swimming. I just want to make sure that people want to be friends with me and not just like me for my swimming pool. And so then my dad became one of his good friends, and they hung out the rest of the summer. See, a lot of people didn't want a relationship with the kid. They wanted what they could get out of the relationship, right? Keep this concept in mind, because it's really important to understand what we're going to talk about tonight with our origin story, that some people don't want a relationship, they want to get the benefits of the relationship. So, to see the truth in our history, we have to be able to separate the two. We have to be able to look at who are the people who want a relationship with Jesus and who want to follow him humbly, and who are the people who want to use Jesus for money and power. Because many of the stories about Christian history focus on people who want to use Jesus for money and power, not real Christians. Makes a big difference. For example, let's talk about this guy. Anybody know who that is? This is Zeus. It's close. This is a Roman emperor, very powerful, one of the most powerful men on the planet at the time, and a very significant individual in the history of Christianity. Is not, did you just say Roman? I said that already. He is Roman. He's not Zeus. Zeus is not a real person. Huh?
Hercules.
It's not Hercules either.
Percy Jackson.
I gotta tell you, the middle school did pretty good guessing. Nobody guessed. Nope, it's not Caesar.
Napoleon.
Not the guy. Napoleon was a French general a couple hundred years ago. Not Roman, not an emperor.
Wait, David.
This emperor came into power about 264 years after Jesus had died and risen again. He became the Emperor of Rome, and his name,
It's Harry Potter.
which you're clearly never going to get,
Wait, just give us the first letter. First letter.
Hey, not to say let me look it up.
Isaac.
first letter is, stop it, Nick, just stop it. First letter is C.
Christ.
Caesar salad. Writer.
Caesar's been tried 4 times.
Christopher.
It's not, or Chris.
Clementine.
Christ.
No.
I said that
No.
very long.
Okay, we're done. We're done. You guys need to be put out of your misery.
Who is it?
Columbus was 1492, a Spanish explorer.
Oh, Columbus.
I said that.
It's going to be a long lesson.
Clark.
His name was Constantine.
Oh, that's right.
I didn't expect you to know. You're the ones who kept guessing. Caesar, Zeus, Caesar, Zeus, Caesar, Zeus, Caesar, Zeus. Constantine. Now listen, guys. Shh. This is why Constantine was so important in the Christian movement, because Christianity is spreading. It's only been spreading for 300 years, which is not very long in the course of history, but it's spreading throughout Rome. It's spreading throughout Europe and different countries, different regions because of the apostles and some of the people that they raised up. Churches are being planted. And Constantine is the first major world leader who gives his life to Jesus. He is the first Roman emperor who gives his life to Christ. And then he goes about doing these massive building projects to build churches all over the Roman world. So here's an example. I have a picture of a church that Constantine built. It's still there. This is one of them. Yes. Well, I think that's actually in Turkey.
Was he Jewish?
No, he was not Jewish. That's in Turkey. This is called Hagia Sophia, the Chapel of Hagia Sophia, and he built a number of churches throughout the empire. He funded all sorts of Christian projects. He implemented some Christian values into the government, and he gave Christianity a massive voice and massive power on the world scene, for better or worse, in a government position. So, think about this for a minute. Let's say you are a politician in the Roman world, right? And you are very ambitious. You want to rise up in the ranks. You want more authority. You want more resources. You want higher positions. So when you see this all happening with Constantine, what might your strategy be for making your own name brighter and bigger and more powerful? What do you think? What would you do? Build churches? Okay. Did you just say do a war? That happened a lot, actually. There were a lot of Roman leaders that were like, I want to be powerful. I'm going to go do a war. That worked. Well, some of them got killed, so it didn't work in those cases. Listen up, guys. Yeah, Lily. I don't know if you'd want to believe an opposing God. You would probably pretend to believe Constantine's God, right? So you'd start pretending to be a Christian because Constantine's a Christian, right? So thousands of people in the Roman Empire are suddenly motivated to call themselves Christians, whether they are or not. And it should go without saying that when someone begins to call themselves a Christian, whatever decisions they make or whatever they do gets associated with Jesus' movement, doesn't it? It kind of becomes part of our history, whether they really are a Christian or not. And throughout history, many of these fake Christians made it to really high ranks. In fact, there's even stories. You guys know what a cardinal is in the Catholic Church? A cardinal is basically second in command. It's the highest group of cardinals that one of them becomes the Pope. There are there are people throughout history that were openly not Christians at all who became cardinals for political reasons. And it's not just in the Catholic Church. It's happened all over the place that people use Christianity for their own benefit, for their own gain. And by the way, it happens a lot today. It still happens today. You got to keep an eye out for it. So, here's the point I want to get across. I have a slide for this. If you want to know the true impact of Christianity, you can't just look at people who call themselves Christians. You must look for people who humbly follow Jesus' example. If you want to look at our history, you have to track people who humbly follow Jesus, not just call themselves Christians. There's a lot of genuine Christians throughout history, and those are the people that carry our true legacy and our true history. All right? Now, this is especially important when our story is told in academic institutions, universities, colleges, schools, things like that. So let me just ask you a question, all right? Let's say you die. Just let that... We'll allow to laugh for a few minutes, get her breath back, then we can move on. He said death. Let's just imagine you die, and somebody who doesn't know you wants to make a statue in your honor. Yeah. They're going to invest a lot of money in it, and this statue in your honor is going to have a bunch of stuff written about your life. Okay? It's going to be a memorial to your life. So, if they're trying to figure out what should be written on the memorial, who would you want them to talk to?
Jesus.
Jesus? Okay. Your parents? Maybe your friends? Yeah? Yeah? People that you cared for, people that you served, people that you reached out with, people who loved you, people who trusted you. What if they decided to go to the people who hate you the most to figure out what to write on that monument? No, Joe's like, nobody hates me. It's totally fine. Just think about that. Joe, just imagine someone hates you. Yeah. It's not possible. He's a pretty good guy, I will say. And they're writing everything on your monument that's going to last forever. I mean, you would hate that, right? This is exactly what universities are doing with our story of Christianity, is that they're following the voices and the writers and the historians and the thinkers who actually wanted to discredit and hated Christianity. They're telling their version of our history to millions of people that sit in classes and listen to these lectures. Just want to make the church look bad. Has anybody ever heard of a figure named Voltaire? Does that sound familiar? Not Voldemort. Voltaire is a real person. Voldemort's fake. Just like Caesar's a real person, Zeus is fake.
No, it's not.
Oh my gosh.
What about Hercules?
Hercules.
Questionable. Might be based on someone. All right. So Voltaire in the 18th century, another guy named Gibbon, was extremely frustrated with the church, especially the Catholic Church, wanted to discredit them, wanted to harm them, harm their reputation. So they wrote a lot of history about medieval times, about the history of the church that was skewed away from any of the good things that the church had done. And guess who has a huge influence on many of the history books or the college courses or the things you learn about Western civilization? It's those writers and others like them. So I'm going to give you kind of a controversial example. I wasn't sure if I should talk about this, but we'll just go for it. We'll see what happens. Zoe will like it. So let's talk about the Crusades for a minute.
I said the Crusades.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Crusades, okay? There's a depiction. There's lots of different paintings about the Crusades. Now, what you are likely to hear about the Crusades is that the Crusades were a group of people mercenaries, sometimes hired by the church, and they used the banner of Christianity and the cross to go rape and pillage villages, to steal all their money, to basically act like pirates, going through Europe, town after town, hurting people, killing people, murdering people, in some sort of fake thing to liberate the Holy Lands. They wanted to get a bunch of money. They wanted to steal people's treasures. And it is a huge embarrassment on the history of Christianity, and we should constantly apologize for it. That's what you tend to hear. That's what I heard growing up. So it's not exactly accurate, come to find out. A couple little things are different. Number one, the crusade was a second crusade. The first crusade happened in northern Africa, because northern Africa was filled with towns that were predominantly Christian, large Christian towns like Alexandria, that were filled with people who believed the gospel. And the first crusade was primarily Muslims who came in and attacked all these Christian towns and wiped them out. And then went all the way through northern Africa. This is why Europe became a Christian stronghold, because most of the Christians in Africa were killed, even though there was a huge spread of the gospel after Jesus came and rose. So Muslims go through northern Africa, they wipe out all these Christian towns, and they get to the Holy Lands, and not only do they take over the Holy Lands, but they start defiling Christian monuments. So for instance, like the tomb where they think Jesus was buried and rose again, they heaped dirt on top of it and tried to bury it under just layers and layers of dirt. And they would do this to churches and to any kind of monuments, any kind of places Christians were visiting. And so in Europe, they're hearing about this happening. And the people who responded, because many Christians would go from Europe to the Holy Lands to pay homage or to visit these holy sites, and they were getting attacked by Muslims. So armies rose up in Europe to go free the Holy Lands. Many of the people in those armies and the leaders of those armies spent their own money and ended up going bankrupt, and they knew they would go bankrupt, but they felt like the cause was worthwhile. Also, many of those soldiers had killed someone in battle, and they felt guilty about killing someone. Even though it was in war, it wasn't technically murder, it hung on their conscience, and they believed that if they liberated the Holy Lands, they would be making amends for the lives that they had taken. Now, you could say it still wasn't a good look. We probably shouldn't have gone to war. We probably should have handled it differently. And that's fair. You might think that. You may not. But my point on this whole thing is, get the whole story. Get the whole story. Because story after story after story of Christian history is like this. There's two sides. And especially when you're in school and when you go off to college, because they're doing everything they can to make us look bad. And here's the crazy thing. Do you know who invented the university system? Not Caesar, not Zeus. Zeus gets a lot of credit for stuff.
Roman.
It was Christians. It was Christians. The first university sprung up in Paris and Bologna around 1160. Oxford and Cambridge came soon after that. And they were started by people who loved Jesus and wanted to create a place where students could come and seek truth and grow in their faith and learn. And it just became an extraordinary movement. Here, let me just put this into perspective. You know, the Aztecs and the Incas in Mexico, built the temples and all that kind of stuff. Oxford was founded before they were a people. Yeah.
Did people
Mind blown. Mind blown. And the whole concept was invented by Christians. So let's just play a little game, okay?
Okay.
We're going to look at some mottos of universities around the world. You should have heard of all these universities. And they're all in Latin, so fortunately you guys know Latin. You're going to do your best to pronounce them, and then I'm going to tell you what they mean, okay? So go ahead and put that slide up. First is Oxford, which is kind of like the Ivy League school of Europe. It's very famous, very wealthy school. If you visit there, it will remind you a lot of Harry Potter. Yeah. Oxford. So on the count of three, you're going to say their motto with me, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Dominus. Nailed it. That means the Lord is my light.
Is that really
That is their real motto. To this day, it's on their crest. Let's try the next one. Harvard University in Boston. One of the original universities founded in America. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Veritas Christo et Ecclesia. You guys are so good.
I know, right?
That means truth for the church and for Christ. That's their motto. It's still their motto. Yep. Third one, Princeton. You guys have heard Princeton too, right? Another Ivy League school along with Harvard. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Your Latin lesson is finished for the day. You can go home and say, we learned Latin at youth group tonight. That means under God's Spirit, she flourishes. Isn't that amazing? Do you know what the most popular school motto around the world is right now, today? Go ahead and show them that next slide. John 8:32, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That is the most commonly used motto at universities around the world. In addition to this, for the first 200 years of America's existence, the Bible is one of the primary textbooks taught in every single school. Every single school. Private, public, every town. They had two books. One taught grammar and reading, and one was the Bible. And those were the two books that everybody used. If you were here 2 weeks ago, I told you a story about my uncle who fell out of a tree and cut his arm with a chainsaw. Remember that story? Yeah. And why did he fall out of the tree?
Because he was cutting the branch.
He accidentally cut the branch he was standing on. I don't know. He cut the branch he was standing on. Our universities were built on the truth of the Scripture and the pursuit of truth. And they're actively, maliciously, consistently cutting off the foundation that they were built on. That's what's happening right now. If you want to learn the true history of Christianity, you have to find the humble followers of Christ and see what they did. That is our legacy. That is what we're a part of. So what do we do about this? What do we do about all this that we've learned? I want to give you two suggestions, then we'll do our question and answer time. First of all, when you go through your education, as you go through school, listen carefully and graciously. You don't need to be combative. You don't need to try to make people look bad. Many times, if you're talking with a teacher or a professor, there's almost nothing you can say to change their mind. But guess what? There might be someone sitting next to you that you could change their mind. And the best way to change their mind is to be gracious and kind about the points that you make. Right? Have you ever heard an argument between two people and you wanted to believe one, even if you didn't believe them? You kind of wanted to because they just seemed like they were a kinder person? Yeah. So be that person as you're dialoguing about these things. But listen graciously, carefully, but always remember, there are two sides to a story. So especially, now listen to this, guys. Listen, this is so important. You will hear things, especially in your universities, that will rock your faith. That will rock your faith to the core. And you won't know the answers. You won't know the responses. You won't know what to say. And that's fine. Just remember, there's two sides to the story. And if it really hits you and it really rocks your faith and it really causes you problems, then go look into it. Go find a pastor. Go talk to your parents. Go talk to someone who knows. Go Google some stuff and read some stuff and figure out the truth. Don't just take something and be rocked by it, and don't take it beyond that. Secondly, you've got to spend time in your Bible. You've got to. You have to know that foundation for yourself. You have to make that part of your education if it isn't already. And by the way, Wednesday and Sunday morning is not enough. It's not enough. You've got to spend time doing it on your own. So let me ask you this question. What are some ways you could incorporate the Bible in your own education? What do you think? Bible study. That's good. That's good. The church. That's good. That's good. Devotions. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Some of you, any morning people here? No. Morning people? Grab that Bible right when you get up in the morning. Any evening people here? Any night people like me? I like to stay up. Yeah, those are my people. Those are my people. Grab your Bible before you go to bed at night. Just read a chapter, read something, spend some time with God. What else can you do?
Pray.
Huh?
Pray.
That's true. You could pray. Yeah. One of my favorite preachers that all the interns have read, A.W. Tozer, would pray before he read the Bible. He would pray, God, help me understand this, help me see the truth. But he would pray the same prayer for every book he read, even if it wasn't written by a Christian. He would say, God, help me understand this, help me see the truth here and know the truth from the lies. It's a great, great approach to learning. What else can you do?
You can join a study group.
You could join a study group, yeah. You could join like an FCA or Youth for Christ or one of those clubs on your school to get a little more. You could bring up conversations about the Bible at the dinner table with your parents. Just bring it up, see what they say. Start a conversation. Anything else? If the school and if the universities will not give you a foundation of God's truth, you better find other ways to build your life on it. You better do it, or you won't be able to stand on the truth. You won't. C.S. Lewis said it this way. He said, I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. And here's the amazing thing that happens, guys. If you will study the Bible, if you will get to know it, if you will discipline yourself to understand it, then the truth of the Bible illuminates everything else that you learn in your education. It's incredible. It's amazing. You could see math differently because you see how God ordered the world and how God created things. You can see language differently because God exerted his power by speaking the word. You can begin to see the power in language and how God uses it. You can see history differently because it's God's story being told and unfolding. You can see science differently. You can see all these things differently. Like C.S. Lewis is saying, it shines light on your whole world, everything. And if you don't take time to get in the Word and learn it, then you'll miss out on all that. So don't miss out. So it's amazing. It can make everything else you learn that much brighter and more extraordinary, even if it's coming from people who don't know Jesus. They can still speak truth, and you'll be able to recognize it. And, just as importantly, you'll be able to recognize the lies as well.